Somewhere in Kurt Russell's home is a gift, an acre of land looking out over a graveyard. No metaphor there, an actual acre of dirt with a direct view of Boot Hill, that famous cemetery in Tombstone, Arizona, the place where Old West outlaws and lawmen finally laid down. Val Kilmer bought it for him in 1993, right after they wrapped filming, and Russell nego, not for the money, but for what it represents. See, the guy who gave a hint to him is gone now. That piece of land is one of the last ties Russell. And he didn't talk about Val Kilmer with that fake, polite Hollywood eulogy talk. He spoke about him like a real friend. The good times, the messy times, all of it. The brilliant sparks, the clashing egos, and that final visit to a dying buddy who could barely talk if the gully's pawning grassed it. At 75, Kurt Russell has been around the block enough to know the difference between Queen and pure truth. When people started asking him about Val, he chose the truth. Here is how that story unfolds. Kurt Vogel Russell was born on March 17, 1951. In Springfield, Massachusetts. She wasn't dreary for his family. It was just reality. His dad, Bing Russell, was a veteran character actor and a former pro ball player, a guy who worked on the set of Bonanza and knew exactly how Hollywood worked. When Kurt was only 4 and moved to California, by the age of 12, he was already starring as the lead in a TV Western called The Travels of Tree with Feeders. No background extra, the lead at 12. His teen years were spent on the Disney payroll, playing the clean-cut kid in family movies 3s and 70s. Clean, marketable, totally safe. He hated being pigeonholed. He loved acting, sure, but he couldn't stand the tiny, safe box Holly locked inside forever. Meanwhile, he chased pro baseball hard enough to make it a real backup plan, until a blown-out shoulder killed him acting entirely on his own terms. His big pivot came in 1979 when John Carpenter cast him as Elvis Presley in a BC television movie. It was a gig nobody thought Kurt could pull off, and it completely shattered everyone's expectations. What he'd do? He walked away with an Emmy nomination. He absolutely disappeared into The King. The attitude, the quiet moments, and the profound sadness, a man too big for this world. It was a heavyweight performance that left his old Disney bosses speechless. John Carpenter saw his potential, kicking off one of the absolute best director-actor partnerships of the 80s. Escape from New York hit theaters in 1981, introducing Snake Plissken, the war hero turned hardened outlaw. Eye patch on, cold face, working strictly on the wrong side of the law. He owned every single scene. The movie became a massive cult classic, and Snake remains the calls that her Russell favorite. It was the character he connected with most, the one that finally let him break out of that clean Disney age. A year later, they dropped The Thing, John Carpenter's absolute masterpiece of sci-fi horror. Russell played Roger McCready with an intense, rarely seen horror. Yet, back in 1982, the box office flopped. But over the years, fans and film critics kept coming back to it, until it eventually became known as one of the buvy of all time. At the center of it all was Kurt Russell, bearded, holding a bottle of cheap whiskey and a flamin' together. Next up was Silkwood in 1983, a heavyweight drama by Mike Nichols where Russell played opposite Meryl Streep as her living guy. That performance snagged him a Golden Globe nod for Best Supporting Actor. It was on that same set where he crossed paths with Cher, who brought along her new, fancy Juilliard trained boyfriend. The kid was ill-quinitude, but he already had this magnetic, mysterious vibe that made everyone wonder just how big of a star he'd become. His name was Val Kilmer. Decades later, Russell would tell Rolling Stone that the kid made a massive right off the bat. Even just hanging around the set, you could tell this young actor was incredibly serious about its craft. Not the kind of guy who brags about it, but the quiet type who just watches, learns, and files it away. Russell recognized that look as he had it too, burying it deep beneath the wholesome Disney days, the baseball career, and his calculated movie pivots. Two actors who treated their work as the absolute highest priority from the second they met. Still, it would take another 10 years before they finally shared a movie set again. Val Edward Kilmer was born on December 31st, 1959, in Los Angeles, growing up in the Valley. He later became the youngest student accepted the Juilliard School in New York, locked in and totally certain, studying a script like a scholar dissecting a text. Inside Out, until he wasn't just playing a character, he was Le Schechter. He hit Broadway in Slab Boys next to Sean Penn and Kevin Bacon. Then came his big film Debeden Toddy 4, followed by Real Genius in 1985, a sharp comedy where he played the smartest guy in the room and made it look totally effortless. He was 25 and doing things on screen that actors twice his age couldn't even touch. But Top Gun was the movie that changed everything. In 1986, Kilmer played Iceman Kazantzopski opposite Tom Cruise in Tony Scott's Class Aviation. The cool, calculated rival who was better than everyone knew it, and showed it with cold stillness and a look that cut gutless. Kilmer actually didn't want the gig, they had to convince him. He feared playing the villain, worrying be all in one or saw an M. When they looked at him, he was dead wrong. Iceman was a total revelation, not because Kilmer was menacing, but because he was so incredibly precision instrument, and his chemistry with Cruise made every single scene feel like a real clash of titans where both got in the right. Top Gun launched Val Kilmer into superstardom, but fame was something he wasn't really built to handle. Not because he wasn't talented, but because he always put the art of acting ahead of the Hollywood machine. He hated being managed. He couldn't play the game of being a celebrity, the press junkets, the fake smile, the calculated tall. He thrived only when the camera was rolling. Everything outside of that set demanded a piece of the he just couldn't more. Directors and producers complained. Batman Forever director Joel Schumacher openly called him childish and impossible. His bad reputation impossible. His bad ads is redly brilliant. Take Oliver Stone's 1991 biopic, The Doors, where Kilmer channeled Jim Morrison with an intense physicality that went way beyond mere mimicry. He sang, he danced, and he vanished into the role so deeply that Stone admitted he sometimes forgot who was watching. Then True Romance in 1993, a minor part in a Tarantino script where Kilmer got to be funny, loose, and unpredictable in ways big average never allowed. Heat in 95, Michael Mann's meticulous crime thriller where Kilmer delivered one of the best supporting side, Proflonacino and Robert De Niro. He was never the loudest guy in the room, but he was always the one you couldn't look away from. Right between those came Tombstone. The 1993 Western had a notoriously chaotic production, ranging from trouble to disaster, depending on who you ask. The original director, Kevin Jarre, got fired early on. He was replaced behind the scenes, if not a Russell himself, who by then knew exactly how to make a great movie and refused to let this one turn into a train wreck. He quietly guided the credit director, George Cosmatos, on the movie's shape, all while delivering the performance as Weimer is Wabrup in front of the camera. It was an incredible display of pure dedication, and 3 decades later, the resulting movie is widely hailed as one of the greatest westerns of all time. Yet the performance everyone still talks about, the one people constantly quote, the one that defined what Tombstone was all about, wasn't Wyatt Earp at all. It was Val Kilmer, as Hakanatani. He played Doc Holliday as a guy who knew his clock was ticking and had completely made peace with it. Not with misery, but with a strange lightness that only comes when you've already let go. Assist was killing him, was shilling him, and everyone knew it, yet Kilmer didn't play him with tragedy. He played him with pure elegance. A dark, sharp, endlessly quotable cool, the southern drawl, the handkerchief, the silver whiskey cup, spinning the tin cup on his finger, while Johnny Ringo flexed with his pistol, leaving everyone in the room trying to guess which of them was actually more lethal. Kilmer made Doc Holliday the weakest, most fragile man in the room, but also the most alive. I'm your Huckleberry, just 4 words. Kilmer said it with such casual, lethal amusement that those words instantly became a permanent part of Western cinema history. If Tombstone is remembered for only one thing, it is Val Kilmer's iconic Doc Holliday, which is saying a lot for a classic movie that features Kurt Russell, Sam Elliott, Bill Paxton, Powart, all bringing their absolute best. When the cameras stopped rolling, they traded rap gifts. Nothing crazy about that. Kurt Russell liked giving meaningful rap gifts when he bonded with a coster for Val Kilmer. He borrowed his Lao Chirul Hill Cemetery in Tombstone, Arizona. Not some joke certificate, a real grave in a legendary graveyard. It fit their characters perfectly. Doc Holliday was defined by death, so the gift felt right. funny, and totally genuine. But Kilmer had his own surprise waiting for Russell. He bought Russell an entire acre overlooking the graveyard, not a grave inside, but a view of the whole valley. Russell said, was all about life. The lawman gets to watch over everything. That exchange summed up their entire bond in the simplest, most beautiful way possible. Doc was all about death, but Wyatt was all about life. That pretty much says it all. Russell still owns that land. In the years after Tombstone, Kilmer hit his peak his commercial Hollywood career. Batman Forever in 1995, the movie crushed the global box office, turning him into an A-list leading man. Just before his professional life got incredibly messy, he was set to play Batman again, but didn't. George Clooney replaced him after rumors swirled about Massa, director Juilliard, on set. The next year, his movie The Island of Dr. Moreau became, by all accounts, one of the biggest disasters in Hollywood history. Suddenly, the first thing anyone said about Kilmer was how impossible he was to work with, but they also talked about how incredibly talented he was. Both things were true. He was a flat-out genius at his craft, but a total nightmare to deal with or else. From Kiss Kiss Bang Bang in 2005 to Bad Lieutenant in 2009, he spent 40 years delivering brutally honest performances. Then in 2014, he got the diagnosis, throat cancer. He hid it for 2 years, guided by his Christian Science faith and a deep-seated fear of showing in public. When Michael Douglas leaked it, Kilmer denied the rumor, but in 2017, he finally confirmed the truth. He detailed his brutal treatments, 2 tracheotomies, chemo, and radiation, sharing the devastating side effects with a raw honesty that shocked anyone who only knew his bad reputation. He beat the cancer, but the surgeries left his voice permanently damaged. The iconic voice that brought Iceman, Doc Holliday, and Jim Morrison to life was gone, reduced to 22. He wrote online how hard it was just to speak. Still, he kept working. In 2021, he released a raw documentary called Val. It was built from decades of personal home videos he had obsessively recorded throughout his life. His son Jack narrated, giving voice to his dad's words. It was an eerie echo of what Val used to sound like, since the actor could no longer speak clearly. It was easily the most honest film of his life. It captured his obsession, his preparation, and his pure joy in acting, along with the deep pain of an artist who spent his life chasing perfection, never quite sure forward it. It also showed the heavy toll of cancer, what was lost, and what survived. Tom Cruise, his old Top Gun rival, fought hard to get him into Top Gun. Maverick in 2022, Kilmer returned as Iceman, the breakout role he was originally taught in The On Instincts 6 years ago. In a short yet heartbreaking scene, Iceman and Maverick finally set aside their decades-long rivalry to say goodbye. His voice was digitally recreated because he could no longer speak, making the moment feel like something far deeper than just a movie scene. It felt like a true farewell, and it was. Top Gun Maverick was his final film. 3 years before Val passed, Kurt Russell visited him at home. He later told Rolling Stone what was like an old friend who could barely talk, who struggled to get words out, but still had so much to say, and the drive to say it. Russell said it was hard for Val to speak, but he still had amazing things to say, and his sense of humor intact. Then Russell shared the one moment that sticks with everyone. Val looked right at him. He said he probably could have been a bit nicer to people over the years, and then he just laughed. He was reflecting his life, and Russell, sitting right there, saw a man who completely understood who he really was. Not the celebrity rumors, not the myths, and not the act. He could laugh at his own flaws with the kind of clarity that sickness brings. Russell called him good guy, saying as a complex sides. Nobody makes it out alive anyway. I just hope he rests in peace. If anyone deserves a peaceful, is Val. Val Kilmer passed away on April 1st, 2025, in Los Angeles, surrounded by his family fans. His daughter Mercedes confirmed the heartbreaking news. He was 65 years old. The cause was pneumonia, after years of fighting throat cancer that had already taken so much from. He left behind Mercedes and his son Jack, the 2 people who had witnessed his entire journey. Through the wild fame, the struggles, the illness, and his late career grace, they loved him. And now, tributes are pouring in from everywhere, but Kurt Russell gave the most honest tribute of all. not behind a podium or in a press release, but in a real conversation. He spoke the real truth about a complicated guy and their simple friendship. He even revealed the gifts they swapped after Tombstone. He remembered their very last visit, and the 6 words Val said with a laugh. He said it was an absolute blast working with Val Kilmer, adding that nobody gets out of here alive. And somewhere in his home today, he still owns an acre of land overlooking Boot Hill, bought for him by a friend who understood, even back in 1993, that Wyatt Earp gets to look down on everything. That life, Val Kilmer got that. He always understood the deeper meaning hiding inside every single scene. In the end, that was the truest thing about him. It outlasted his reputation, his sickness. He is still alive in those performances. It is right there every time someone plays Tombstone, Top Gun, or The Doors. Remembering, roared that rush of him perform for the very first time. And Kurt Russell knew it from the very first moment they met. He was just a serious young guy hanging around the Silkwood set, not yet famous, but already entirely himself, already unmistakably Val Kilmer. If this story touched you, if his movies shaped your life, or if his unforgettable voice and face are locked in your memories, drop a comment down below. We read every single one. And here is a question really worth thinking about today. Is there someone in your life you have never fully seen through 360 degrees, the guilt and reddit, everything in between? Because Kurt Russell truly looked, and what he saw in the end was worth the ride. See you in the ride.